Well, hello and welcome to Alpha Software Developers Day 2023. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I am very excited about all of the very cool content that we have to present to you today. So let's get started. So a couple of things that you should know. This page that you're looking at here on the screen, Dev Day 2023 Content Portal, is the only page that you need. It's got each of the links to each of the sessions. So just keep this page handy. Second thing is that you can ask questions at any time. There is a questions box and a chat box in the GoToWebinar control panel. Feel free to go ahead and use that. If you have any connectivity problems, send an email over to custserve@alphasoftware.com. Though I have to say, most of the time, connectivity issues can be resolved simply by logging out and logging back in again. The next thing I want to let you know is there will be recordings of each of these sessions. Hopefully they will be up tomorrow, and you will find them at this exact same page, DevDay 2023-content-portal. So let's take a quick look at the schedule, and then we're going to get started with Alpha Anywhere, a year in review and a look ahead. And in fact, this first session is going to be with our co-founder, Selwyn Ravens, as well as Bob Moore, VP of Mobility, coming at the end to talk about cool new things that have happened in Alpha Anywhere. That's going to be followed by folks over at Start Software over in the UK, who have done quite a lot of work using Alpha Anywhere, building a variety of applications for a whole bunch of different industries. And they're going to show off some of the tips, techniques, and apps that they have built. Then at noon here Eastern time, we are going to be doing some breakout rooms. We'll have a few of our developers here on hand. You can log in. This link should be up by 12 o'clock today, and it'll let you log in and chat with people. Some of the topics will be UI, UX design. There might be some database, Cordova, app development, app server, really any question that you may just generally have come in, and there may be a developer there who might be able to answer those questions. Followed by that, we have some very cool stuff happening with Transform, where our solutions engineer, Nikos Kazantsa, shows off how he's used Transform to build very, very large forms, upwards of thousands of fields, and how he can do that very, very quickly. Then we're going to take a look deeper at Transform with our CTO, Dan Bricklin. He'll take us through the new features of the past year and some of the features that are just on the immediate horizon. Followed by that, Dion McCormick, no relation, but Alpha Expert, who many of you have seen present before, is going to be back showing you how to use Alpha Anywhere with a large language model AI service. And in particular, he's going to be adding a chatbot to an application. So if you have some interest in AI, I think you're going to want to stick around for that. And finally, we're going to have closing remarks coming up at the end of the day, along with Greg Bowling, our VP of Sales and Customer Success, who's going to be showing you some unusual and goofy application of Alpha Transform technology. I don't even know what it is, but it should be fun. So let's get started. Hello, Selwyn, are you there?
I am here. Can you
Excellent.
hear me?
I sure can. You're coming through loud and
Great.
clear. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter, and we can get started on Alpha Anywhere. I'll look back and look ahead.
Thanks, Dave. So you should be able to see my screen right now.
I sure can, yes.
And what we're going to be doing is, let me just change this around. So you can see the my PowerPoint here, which is a quick tour of new features since DevCon 2022, right? So what we're going to be doing today is looking at what's new in Alpha Anywhere since the last DevCon. So there have been literally hundreds of new features that have been added to the product. We've had multiple releases, and what I'm going to be doing today is a walkthrough on some of the selected new features. I'll be actually doing a demo, and so what we're going to be talking about are new features. And everything that I'm going to be talking about is in the current release version of Alpha Anywhere. So we did a new release of Alpha Anywhere yesterday. So everything that I'm talking about is currently available in a released version of the product. So we're going to talk about PWAs, which are progressive web applications. We're going to talk about JSON forms. We're going to talk about the pre-populated spreadsheet control, which is one of my favorite new features, document templates, single sign-on, scrolling panel layouts, user-defined icons in column titles, performance. So we basically added some features that allow UX components to load incredibly quickly. So this is going to allow for much more performant applications. We've added low-level support for MongoDB, which improves over the current support, which is done by SQL emulation. So we'll be demoing that. Then we have property grids, resizable panels. In the security framework, we have a component that shows which users are currently active, so I'll be demoing that. We've changed the way mobile preview is done in the UX Builder. And then finally, we have the new underbar debug 1 statement in XBasic, which allows you to debug into background threads, which is another one of my favorite features. So we'll be demoing all of that. So what I'd like to do now is step over and go directly to demo these new features. So I'm going to go now to Alpha Anywhere. And so you should be able to see my Alpha Anywhere screen right now. And we're going to start out by demoing.
Yes, you can. I just want to let you know. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. So we're going to start out by demoing the PWA feature. So I've previously created a PWA over here, so I'm going to just go there and launch it. So there's my PWA, and the first thing to notice about the PWA is that it comes up almost instantaneously. So this is a PWA that has a list with a detail view. The detail view is connected to a SQL database, and it'll operate disconnected. So you can see here that let me just close it down and reopen it. So there it is on my taskbar. So double click there. Sorry, just single click it. I meant to single click it. I shouldn't have double clicked. There was single click, so you can see it opens up instantaneously. So I'm going to close it down again and then reopen it, and then you can see there it is, instantaneous. And if I make an edit there and I don't commit it, so if I go there and change that to say 59, hit the save button, you can see we have a dirty row there. I'm going to close the PWA down and then reopen it, and you can see that the dirty row is remembered because it's been stored in IndexedDB. And now I can go ahead and hit synchronize, and the data gets synchronized. So again, so there's the PWA opening up instantaneously. So the thing about a PWA is that it's an installable app, which means it can be installed in either a desktop browser or a mobile device. When you install it on a mobile device, it creates an app that, like a Cordova app, is installed on the home screen of the app. But unlike a Cordova app, it does not have to be submitted to an app store. So the PWA provides a much easier route to building mobile applications than Cordova does, and it offers many of the same features that a Cordova app has, with the exception of access to the file system. But instead of accessing the file system, these PWAs can access IndexedDB, which offers a huge amount of storage, much more than the local storage. So we're going to demo quickly how you would build a PWA. So I'm going to go here and build a new component. And I'll just choose one of these samples over here. So now I've got a new component. I'm going to go here and change the style sheet from GR Gray to say Alpha. And then I'll save this as PWA1. And now to turn this from a UX component into a PWA, we just go to the control panel here, and then we click on this button, PWA. So we select PWA there and click on the button, and then we can create the PWA, and then the PWA needs to then be loaded onto a device or into your browser. So instead of the after file set is created action, instead of setting that to open folder, I'm going to say publish it to Amazon S3, and then I can choose any one of my existing connection strings to my own personal S3 buckets, or I can use the built-in Alpha software bucket, which is great for testing during the development phase. But during production, when you do a release of your own, we recommend that you use a private bucket. So let's go ahead now and build this PWA. We can also specify what icon we want to use for the app. So let's go here and choose an image. So I'll just go there and choose just any old image, and then go ahead there and say build the app. So the PWA app is being built, and after it's being built, it'll be uploaded to S3. So now we're uploading those files to S3. Okay, so I'm going to just need to exit Alpha and redo that. So let's just exit quickly to restart Alpha. So we're going to build the PWA and then upload it to S3 again. So there are a lot of files in this PWA, so it takes a little bit of time to upload it to S3. But now it's been uploaded, and we can see in the address bar of S3, it knows it's a PWA, so it says here install it. So I'll go ahead and say install the app. And there's the icon for the app. We're going to say yes, install it. And then we're going to see on our taskbar, it says, do you want to install it on the taskbar? So I'll say yes again. So there's my PWA now. And if I close it down, there's the icon. So if I double click that, or single click that, sorry, the PWA opens up instantaneously. So what we've shown in this video is how you can easily turn a UX component into a PWA, and we built a PWA, and here's a more complex PWA that basically stores data in a list control using IndexedDB as the persistence layer. So if we go back to that app that was designed here, we'll see that we have a list over here. The list is based on Northwind customer table. Then we go here and we say that we want to persist the list to storage. We've chosen IndexedDB as the location where the data is stored. And the reason that we chose IndexedDB is that, unlike a Cordova app where the file system is available, for a PWA, the file system is not available. So we've chosen IndexedDB. And then we've also chosen that the list over here is going to be restored. So if we go back to properties here and then look at storage, we've said that when the component is loaded, the list should be restored from storage. And that was all that was needed to be done in order to make a PWA that will operate offline. The other thing to note about PWAs is that you need to be running with HTTPS. So I've got my server currently set to I've turned on TLS SSL over there, and then you have to publish the app to your server. And so when you create your PWA, you need to specify what the URL is for Ajax callback. So you can see, since I published my app to the live preview folder, this is what my URL for Ajax callbacks is. So if I go back to this app here and I press the Ajax button, you can see we're making an Ajax callback to the server, and there's the response that we got from the server. So PWAs represent an incredible ability to build installable apps that are useful for both mobile and browser-based applications. So the next thing we're going to talk about are JSON forms. So we released JSON forms in the nightly builds quite some time ago. It's in the final build right now. So let's go ahead and create a new UX component with a JSON form. So I'll go there and I'll choose JSON form over there. So this is, I'm going to put in a JSON form JF1. And the thing that's attractive about JSON forms is that you can build very complex forms that are highly performant because they only represent one control. So for example, if you wanted to have a traditional UX component that had, say, 100 fields, you would have 100 individual controls listed over here. And the more controls you added, it would take longer and longer to build and render the component. But a JSON form represents just a single control, and it can be quite complex. So let's go into the builder for the JSON form. So here we have the builder. We can use the quick start genie, and I'll basically I can create a quick start by looking at a list control. I can build a JSON form for a list control, or I can just enter a list of controls there. I'll say quick start, and then I'll say an invoice app. And so here's the JSON form that has been created. So we can see what we have in this form are an input control, another input control that's been set as a date. And then we have a repeating section for extended items. So we go into run mode here. And we see that there's our JSON form. So there's the header, the date control over there. And then as we click this button, we get extended items over there. So we can type in, say, price of 2, quantity of 2, price of 2. And then we have an extended total of 9. So this JSON form represents a what we used to call a repeating section in the UX component, and it also has calc fields, etc. So this was done by just basically, so you can see that we just have a single control over here on the UX, but in actual fact, this JSON form has multiple controls inside of it. Another nice thing about JSON forms is that they can be used for a list with a detail view. So let's go now to let's make a new list control. So I'm going to go here now and say create a new list control. I'll just say list 1. And I'm also going to go here and put a JSON form on the screen. So I'll go there and say JF1. And then I'm going to go to this list over there and specify that this list is based on a SQL data source. So I'll choose the customer table. And then I'll go to my JSON form. And I'll use the quick start genie. I'll say build this JSON form based on a list control. There's my list. So we can see that the JSON form got built over here, and it's got all of the controls that match the list control. And then I'm going to go here to the very end and say add, and I'll say choose from the predefined control section. I'll choose the list detail view buttons over there. So this puts in all the buttons that we normally use, save, and then synchronize, etc. So I'm going to go to this list and make it a little bit wide. I'll make it 50% wide. And I'll go back to this list here and say that this list has a detail view, and that the detail view is based on not the traditional field map, but instead we'll choose a JSON form, and then we'll choose our JSON form over there. Go ahead and then click OK, and then save it, list with JSON form. Go over into working preview now. So there's our list control, click on a row. There's our JSON form showing the data, and we can go ahead and make a change. Let's go change that to say 60, and then hit the save button. What we see is that that is now a dirty row, and then hit the synchronize button, and that edit is now going to be saved, and we can see that the orange icon has gone away and it's been saved. So normally this type of control where you can edit multiple fields would have required many controls inside the UX component, and now we just have a single control for the JSON form. So JSON forms represent a very efficient way of creating large forms in Alpha. The nice thing about JSON forms as well is that they can be completely data driven. So you can easily build components where the JSON form is loaded dynamically from a definition that is stored in a database. What you can also do is you can store the JSON form in a repository. So you can retrieve JSON form definitions from a SQL database. So you can see, I can go here and say more, and then I can save this JSON form in a repository, and I can load JSON forms from a repository. So in addition to JSON forms, the other thing that I'd like to talk about are prop grid controls. So if we go now, let's just quickly go here to this list with prop grid. So here's a list control that uses a property grid. So if we go to controls here, we see there we have the list, and then we have a property grid control, and I'll show how this property grid control is created. But let's just go ahead right and now run it first. So we see there's our list control, and there's the detail view, which is implemented as a property grid. So again, we have the list, we have the property grid, and then we have the buttons that do all the synchronization. So let's go now and look at how we did that. So I'm going to go now and look at this. Well, actually what I'll do is I'll add a new property grid. So I'll go to add controls, and then I'll go here to property grid, and I'll call it PG2. So there's our property grid. We can base the property grid on either a JSON definition, an XDialog definition, or a list control. So we're going to bind it to our list control. There's our list control over there. Then we can specify for this list, for any one of these fields, we can change the control type in the property grid from a text box to something else. So let's go to say city over there and change the city from a text box to say an edit combo, and then we'll make it into a dynamic edit combo that is based on say the Northwind database. And then we'll go here and we'll select the customer table, and then we'll select the city field. So now we've added a second prop grid to this UX component. And over here, there it is. And there's our city field, which has got a pick list in it. So prop grids represent a really nice way of displaying data quickly. And prop grids can be built from either a list control definition, or as you can see here, if we go to, we can base the prop grid on some JSON data. So there's the sample JSON data that we can use, or we can base the prop grid on an XDialog definition. So prop grids, this is an example here of a property grid, and we use them all over the Alpha Anywhere IDE. And if you were building desktop applications, you probably built property grids. So this is what a property grid definition looks like in XDialog. That's what the preview looks like in XDialog. And then this is how that same property grid would look if rendered in a, let's just quickly go there and do that again. So let's start out here and go to new UX component, and then go to add control, choose a property grid over there. Open up the builder and go here and choose XDialog, and then paste this in. So that's what it's gonna, that's the XDialog version of this property grid. So we'll go ahead now, and then we'll run it. So there's our property grid that matches the XDialog definition. So we have a category which we can open and close. We have, as we click on each field here, we get help over there. And then we have a password control over there. So you can see we've got that password control. So property grids represent a new control type in a UX component that allows you to build property grids into your components very easily and very quickly. The next thing I'd like to quickly talk about are document templates. So if you go to the web control panel, you'll see that there's a new category here called document templates. And a document template is a way of merging JSON data into a template definition to produce a PDF or produce a Microsoft Word docx file. And the nice thing about document templates is that they're extremely fast. So let's go now and demo this document template over here. So I'll go here and say preview as PDF. So there's my document template. It's merging Tom Smith into the data. So let's go ahead and run this again. So preview as docx, and there it is over there. So let's go and now build a document template. So the other thing about document templates is that they can be created by importing report definitions. So you can see that I've got a report over here. And if I go to the preview this report is based on SQL Northwind customer table. So I'll type in USA, and then go ahead. So there's the data in the report for the USA. So let's go now and create a new document template. So I'll go here and say new. And then what I can do is I can start by importing a report definition. So there's my report. So here's the document template. Has two pieces to it. It has a data section and a layout section. So if I go here and say preview the data, this is the data that's going to be displayed in this document template. So I'll go there and say UK, and there's the data that's going to be displayed. And then there's the over here the layout that has been generated from the report definition. And if I go here and preview the document, there's the PDF that has been created by merging this data into the template over there. So now that I've created this, I can go ahead here and save it, and I can just give it a name, say doc2. So now I have a new document template here, and if I go here and say preview as PDF, and I'll go here and type in, say, UK, there's the document template. So the other thing that's nice about document templates is that they represent a nice, easy way of merging JSON data into a template to create a PDF. So let's go now and create a new document template that's based on static data. So I'll say new, and then I'll define my data source, and I'll say define static data source. And we can either go here and include sample data, or I'll go here and I'll type in, say, first name. So let's just go put a colon over here. So we've got one control first name, comma, and then we'll do last name. Click save. So there's our static data. Move over to the layout. So in order to define the layout, we could generate the layout from the data, but what I'm going to do is use an HTML template. So I'll go here and say hello, and then we'll insert the field from our data. So there's first name, and then I'll put in a space, and then I'll put in, say, last name, and then I'll save it. So there's the template that has created. If I say preview, it looks like that, hello Fred Smith. And so let's close that down, save this, and I'll call this static 3. Now what I could do is I can build a UX component. So let's go here and build a new UX component. And we'll put in a button. So we'll say generate PDF. Then we'll choose action JavaScript. We'll choose this new action here called open a document template. And I'll choose my template static 3. And I can either basically have the action generate a PDF or a Microsoft Word docx file. If I choose PDF, then I can display it using the PDF viewer, or I could email it to somebody if I wanted. So let's go ahead there and choose that. So now we'll go and we'll run this component. So there's hello Fred Smith over there, and you can see it's extremely quick. It's pretty much instantaneous. But what I can also do is I can merge a new JSON into it. So right now, when I press this button, it says hello Fred Smith, because Fred Smith was hard coded into the layout template. So what I can do is, I think I've got a, let me just go to an XBasic script that I've got over here. So let's go back here. So there I'm changing, so I'm going to basically, so this is, I want to change this to static 3 over there. And I'm changing the data from to Fred Jones in London. So I'm going to go ahead now and run this. So you can see it says, wait, actually, I have the wrong field names there. So let's just change this to back to static text 2, static 2. So there's hello Fred Jones in London. And if I go change this to you can see now we've changed the data. So we've produced a PDF file extremely quickly by merging user-defined JSON data into the static file definition. So the next thing that I'd like to talk about is improved performance by loading the child UX components much more quickly than was previously done. So what I've done is I've created a, let's just go close this down. I've got a UX component over here called child UX, sorry, which is, it's not actually that big a component, but the behavior difference is much more visible when you have very big components. So this component is displayed over here. So what I'm going to do now is create another component that opens up this child component with an Ajax with an Ajax callback using Action JavaScript. So here's my button, and this button is going to open up this child UX. So let's go ahead and run it now. So this is the traditional way of opening up a child UX component. So I'll press this button, and we see, actually that was pretty fast. So let's do it again. Yeah, so we see the working message for a while, and then the component opens up. So let's now use the new method of opening up this child. So I'm going to go here and duplicate this control cell, hit Control D to duplicate it. And then I'll open up the builder, and you'll see that there's a new property here called Open UX using static HTML file. So I'll go ahead and click that. And when I do that, it says that that UX component called child UX wasn't configured to build a static version. So it says, would I like to do that? So I'm going to go ahead and say yes. So that's going to now build the static HTML version of that component. And now let's run this. So this is the traditional way of opening it. So you can see there's the working message. And now here's the faster way. So I don't know if you noticed that, but it's much faster. You can see that it's significantly faster. So this speed difference is much more apparent for large components. So I'm going to go here to Alpha Cloud, and I'm going to run the Transform Form Filler app, which is a huge application. And I'm going to run it both the traditional way and the new fast way. So I'm going to go, I just need to get this off the screen here. So I go to my bookmarks. And this is the traditional way, which will take about 15 seconds to load the component. So there we go. So we're loading it right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So about 14 seconds to load that component. So now we're going to do the same thing using the static HTML version. So we'll go to bookmarks, and then I'll choose this one over there. And we can see that it took maybe a second or so. So this ability to load UX components using the static HTML version can provide a huge performance benefit. So this feature is available not just in Action JavaScript, but also in all other places. So you can see that if I now were to go to a tab UI, so I've got two buttons here that both open up that same child UX component. And this first button is the traditional way of doing it. The second button, what we've done is we've said here, open using static HTML. So let's go ahead and run this now. So this is the traditional way. So you see the working message, and this is the fast way. So you'll see that there's practically no delay at all while it opens up. The other thing that's nice about the fast method is that it does allow you to use different themes for the child component. So let's close this down now and go back to our child component over there. And what we should see in this child component is that because we said we want to use it in the static HTML version, what we should have is, if we go now to properties and we scroll all the way down, we see that basically every time this component is edited, a static HTML version will also be saved. So I'm going to go now to controls, to properties, sorry, and change the theme from alpha to say alpha dark green. And then if I save it now, we'll see it saves the component, and then it's going to now go ahead and build the static HTML version when it finishes. So there we can see it's creating the static file set right now. And then let's go back and run this tab UI. So go back here and run it now. And when we press this button, we see that the child component is using a completely different theme than the parent component, and also that it loads extremely fast. So now we've shown how you can use the static HTML feature for Action JavaScript and Tab UIs, but you can also use it, excuse me, if I go here to this component here and I say add embedded component and choose the child UX, you'll see that the embedded component also has the same ability to use the static HTML version. And then finally, the last thing that I want to point out is that if you go to this child UX and you say create a page, you'll see that this also has an option of using a static HTML version. So if I say save page now and call it page, so we've generated the page, and if we run this page in the browser, what we'll see is that the page loads very quickly. So there's the page loading very quickly. Let's just copy this to a new tab just to see again. So there we go. So we've added the ability to get dramatically faster performance for loading UX components in your applications. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is MongoDB. So MongoDB is a NoSQL database, and previously you could connect to MongoDB by building a SQL connection string that required you to define a schema. But now what you can do is you can use the built-in MongoDB Explorer. So I'm going to go here to Tools and then go to MongoDB Explorer. Choose the connection string. So I've got MongoDB installed locally on my machine. I also have a cloud version of Mongo Atlas, which is Mongo's cloud version of the product. So I'll start out by going to Mongo local. Then I'll go there and choose the database I'd like to work with. And then I'll go here and choose the collection I'd like to use. So I'll choose the customer collection. So there's the data now. You can see that all of the data is just JSON format. So I can go now and scroll through the data. And I can make edits. So if I go there and change that to say 2 and then hit save document, basically there's the record was saved. So the nice thing about the Mongo interface is that you can also now use this efficient Mongo approach directly in a list control. So let's go now and build a new list control. And when we define the data source for this list, we can choose MongoDB, and then we can choose the MongoDB connection string. So we'll choose the Mongo local over there, choose the collection that we're talking about, which will be, say, the customers collection, then go ahead and choose the field. So I'll choose ID, customer ID, city and country. Go to my layout and then go to working preview. So there's our list control being populated directly from MongoDB. So there also are a number of XBasic functions that you can use to create MongoDB databases, collections, records, etc. So the next thing that I'd like to talk about are resizable panels. So resizable panels are a feature that people have been asking for quite some time now. So let's see, do I have, so there we go. So I've got a component over here, and you can see that we've got a panel layout, and inside this panel layout, we've got several panel cards. And for each panel card, we've turned on the allow resize feature. So let's go ahead now and run this. So there's, we have panel cards there, so I can go resize this panel card, and I can resize this panel card. And when I do that, the sizes are remembered. So if I come back now and run this again, we'll see that Alpha has remembered the size of the panel card. So this ability to resize panels and panel cards is something that people have been asking for quite some time. So resizable property grids, resizable panels are a big deal. The other thing that we've done is we've rewritten the way mobile preview is done. So you can see here, I've got mobile preview turned on, and when we go to mobile preview right now, we have a much more extensive list of available devices you can choose from. So we go there, for example, there. I can also toggle between landscape and portrait directly without having to go and change the different, change to a different device definition there. And once I've built the mobile preview, I can resize the window easily. And you can see there that that becomes the size, and then I can save that so that I can give that, I can save it and give it a name so I can get back to that size very easily. So the improvement in working preview is there. The other thing that we've done is we've added the ability to see active users in a web application. So a common requirement in web applications is to know who's currently logged into the application. So what I'm going to do now is switch over to the security framework. And I'm going to basically, so you'll see that I've got, what I've got over here is a security framework that was built by going here to web security, going to the quick setup genie, and then I turned on active users over there. So let's go ahead now and do a live test on this. So I'm going to just log in as user one, who happens to be an admin. And we can see now we have this new active users tab there, button. So this shows me all the active users. So I can go there and say detail. And user one is at this point the only person who's done anything. He's done a login and he's done an XBasic refresh. So now let's go and log out and log in as user two. So I'll go here and type user two. And we'll go there and try type in user two. So we'll log in. we'll see that since user 2 is not an admin, the active user button is not available. So let's go back to user 1 now. We'll go back to active users and we'll go to detail, refresh the data. And we can see now we have the activity for user 2 as well. So user 2 did a login, then he did a log out, etc. So the ability to see who's currently using your application using the active user view is a nice feature. Then I should also mention that for two-factor authentication, we now have new events that allow you to specify XBasic code that controls when the two-factor challenge should be sent to the user. So what you might want to do is only prompt for two-factor authentication if the user has never logged in from this particular IP address before, or maybe you want to only use two-factor authentication once every 2 weeks, etc. And you can also specify a new option to trust browser. So the first time the user logs in with two-factor authentication from a particular browser, you could store that information in the in local storage, so that the next time the user logs in from that particular browser, the two-factor authentication is not requested. So the next thing I'd like to mention is one of my favorite new commands, is the ability to debug XBasic in a background thread. So if we go back to this component here, this security component, we previously never had the ability to debug into background threads. So for example, here's the on login event, which we could not previously debug into. So I'm going to go here and put in underbar debug 1 over there. So I'm going to be debugging into the on login event now. So I'm going to go there and save that. Go back to live test now, and then do a live test. Then I'm going to log in and debug into that function. So we'll go there and set the user ID and password, and then I'll hit login. And you'll see now that the debugger is open. So we're in the debugger, we're actually in the on login event right now, and we're debugging into this event, which is something that was not previously possible. So that's a really nice feature. So the last thing that I would like to talk about is the ability to operate the development server with SSL turned on, which is important because so many web applications today require SSL, and the ability to test them easily with the development server is a really nice feature. So if we go back to the web projects here and go to the development server, we'll see that we now have the ability to turn on SSL for the development server. And when we do that, Alpha Anywhere will automatically create a self-signed certificate for you. So that's a really quick tour of what was new in Alpha Anywhere during the last year. And what I'd like to do now is pause and take questions if there are any questions, and then turn it over to Bob Moore, who'll talk more about PWA's
Excellent. Thanks very much, Sylvan. Appreciate it. Yeah, we do have some questions. So let's start with one that we do get from time to time, especially people who are new to PWAs. And the question is, does the PWA, does it require an application server?
The answer is it depends. So if the PWA makes AJAX callbacks to do things, then obviously it does require an application server. If the PWA does not make AJAX callbacks, so for example, if I look at this PWA here, this PWA makes AJAX callbacks to the server to write this data into a database. So in that case, it's necessary to have an application server. But if your PWA talks directly to a backend, say like Firebase or something like that, then there's no requirement to have a server. Also, if we look at this simple PWA over here, this PWA does not make AJAX callbacks, and so therefore a server is not required.
Excellent. Next question is, can you use the login security, in other words, the security framework, with a progressive web application?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Another question had to do when you're putting together something with JSON form fields. The question was, how do you determine the width of the JSON form fields, or can you ahead of time?
You can determine that. Basically, there's several ways of doing that. One is to specifically set the width. You can use flex or percentages. And the other thing that we have, which I didn't show, is just like transform. You can design different sizes for the controls based on the screen size of the device. So the same mechanism that transform uses for creating small, medium, large, and extra large layouts is available for JSON forms as well.
Great, and that's all responsive, so it checks the screen size and then
exactly.
Fantastic. Great. Here's a question: is PWA replacing Alpha Launch?
No. So Alpha Launch basically lets you install Cordova applications on your device. So PWAs are not Cordova applications. They don't have access to the file system, but they do have the ability to use the camera, etc. So I think that the requirement for Alpha Launch will go down, because PWAs represent a really easy way of creating mobile applications. But I don't think Alpha Launch will be replaced, because there's still a need for Cordova applications. For example, a Cordova application can use SQLite, an on-device SQLite database, whereas a PWA cannot do that.
Right. The next question is okay, so with Alpha Launch, it's easy to Alpha Launch. You just go into one of the app stores and download Alpha Launch. But with a PWA, how do you install that on a mobile device?
So that's actually discovered, discussed in the documentation. So in the documentation, we describe how you install a PWA on an iOS device and also on an Android device. And it's pretty easy. It's very similar to the way you install it in a browser. So you have, if you're on an iOS device, you have to use Safari. You can't use the Chrome browser. And if you use Safari, then you can go to the share icon in Safari, and then there's a menu item called Add to Home Screen, and that'll add the PWA to the home screen, just like a native app would be installed.
Excellent. Okay, can a progressive web app have embedded UXs in it, or does it need to be all one UX?
No, a PWA can have embedded UXs, but there's one restriction, is that you have to set the embedded UX to load pre-computed. So if I go, you'll see here, if I go back to this component here, where I think I did a embedded component. So let's go to parent with open child there. And then if I go to add control and go to embedded object, and then choose the child UX, you'll see that one of the options for the embedded object is the method for opening the UX, and that must be set to pre-computed over there. And then you can use embedded components in PWAs.
Fantastic, excellent. Well, that's the bulk of the questions. It's coming up on 10. So now we're going to turn it over to Bob Moore, who has a presentation pre-prepared. So thanks very much, Selwyn. We're going to go ahead and show that presentation now. Now, just a quick word of warning, if you're wearing headphones, that sometimes pre-recorded sections can be a little bit louder. So I just don't want to blast your ears out. Make sure your finger's there on the volume control. Also, a few of you we have found can't actually watch these videos. If that's the case, try logging in again. Otherwise, it will definitely show up in the recording that we should have posted tomorrow. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and begin Bob's presentation.
Okay, today I'm going to just go over a couple of things that can be helpful when you're trying to debug PWA applications, and we'll be using the Alpha Notes application that I wrote a couple of years ago. This is an application that uses Firebase for a note-taking application. I cover this in a previous video I did a couple of years ago. I'll make sure to leave a link to that. So that you can check out those videos. They explain PWAs in detail. We're not going to go into that level of detail here today, but we're going to go through a number of gotchas, things that can be tricky when you're actually building these things. So we're going to select our Alpha Notes component. We're going to click on the PWA icon up here. And I've already filled out a bunch of the stuff here, but yeah, my static cache version name, dynamic cache version. Let's see, let's make this a little bit bigger. Let's say we're going to have 20 entries in our dynamic cache. You can adjust that to be anything you want, pretty much up, I think, to 255. It just eats up space, and it's a matter of how much caching you really need. And you got to play with that. That's what you got to do. We've got our offline page defined, so if there's no connection, this offline page would indicate, hey, we don't have a connection, and you know, you're gonna have to try back later or something like that. If there's a particular file that it's trying to access that's not in the cache, that's what it's gonna call that. This particular program doesn't make any AJAX URL, so we don't need to worry about that. And in this case, I have to make sure using Firebase Cloud Firestore is checked, because these entries would be entered into the dynamic cache, and they could kind of mess with updated data. So make sure you check that if you're using Firebase. And after the file set's created, I just want to open the folder. We're going to run live test on that. So let's just go ahead and do that. It's now generating the PWA files. And we can close that out, and we'll notice a PWA folder right here. Just double click on that. Double click on Alpha Notes, and now we see all of the files that were just generated, including our service worker and our manifest. You can go ahead and open those up if you're interested and take a look at the structure there, but everything should be good to go at this point. Right now, I'm going to hit live test, and we're going to do a live test. In this case, I'm going to clear the live test folder because remember, a PWA has to be served from a unique domain name. So this local host will be our domain name here. This allows us to do local testing. A PWA cannot be installed from an HTTP protocol. It has to use HTTPS, but localhost is allowed. So let's take a look at that when we'll clear the test folder and publish it, and then off we go. So let's go ahead and do that. My default browser here is going to be Chrome, and sure enough, it brings it right on up. Now I'm going to hit function F12, and we're going to bring up our debugging tools. And notice I've got the application tab highlighted here, and I've got my service worker highlighted here, and I can see in this case I already had installed this app once before, and even though I rebuilt it and everything, it had the same URL, and this service worker was running. So these run on a completely different thread than the browser itself. Okay, so you can see right here that it's waiting to activate. I don't think I made any changes. Let's update on reload and reload the page. And there it goes. And now we see it's been activated. Here, I'm going to uncheck that now. And so even though we hadn't made any changes, we now have a new service worker up and running. So if we had made changes to the app, we'd see them in this particular location. If we were to, let's look at the cache storage. Now, this cache storage is different than what you might think of as the browser cache. This is using the cache API, and this is what's used to manage all the service worker, really. So these are the files that are going to be cached here. Let's go take a look and see what we've got. So in our PWA cache, we see all the files that are in the static cache. So this is the files that Alpha has indicated that these are files you want to cache. And we're going to notice something interesting when we go over to the dynamic cache. So let's do that. We'll click over here. And oh, hold it, there's the index file is there as well. But oh, that's because a parameter's been added in here. So this is in the dynamic cache. And you can see there's a number in the dynamic cache, again, because I've probably done this a few times. And so that cache has got kind of stale stuff in it, right? So when you publish, you got to make sure that that we're not adding unique parameters in like this into our production applications. It will still work, but this is going to be limited to the number of entries that we had indicated that we were going to allow in the dynamic cache. And it'll just keep overwriting these as this dynamic cache fills up. We can also, if we're interested in it, we can right click on it and delete it. So now we just deleted the dynamic cache completely, and we could go ahead and reload it. If we reload the app, it's going to go ahead and recreate the dynamic cache. And again, you will see, because the file we're looking at has got this parameter on it right here, that's different than what's in the static cache. So you got to be careful with this stuff, and you have to understand it. You have to understand exactly what's going on, or you could get kind of thrown, like, oh, gee, I made a change and it didn't work, and things like that. So this is something that's going to be really helpful for you when you're trying to debug PWA apps. If you want to, you can also go ahead and let's go to the service worker here. And let's say we wanted to test the offline capability here. We can just check this. If you just check the offline capability, this is now offline. Okay. And I can make a change if I wanted to. Change this again. And I could go ahead and say, okay. Now that didn't get updated to Firestore, and again, you can go into Firestore and check it out, and you'll see that that didn't happen. But then when we go ahead and turn it back on, then it'll update. The other thing you can do here is, let's see. You can take a look at like IndexedDB and see what's going on there. Notice that Firebase uses IndexedDB, so you can inspect what's in here if you're interested. Session storage, local storage, cookies, everything's here. So that's sort of a quick run through of what you might see in the development tools here in Chrome that can help you out with your PWA app. Oh, one other thing I wanted to show you was this. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's go ahead and live test again, but this time let's say, oh, I want to put that on my Android device. So in this case, I'll say remote test, and I'll say okay. And I'm going to display a QR code, and there it is. And let's bring up my Android device here. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to install it. So I'm going to call it my camera, and we're going to do our thing here and install it. So this is our PWA app now. You can request a desktop site from over here. Okay, we're not going to do that. We'll just leave that the way it is now. Now, if you look closely, you're going to see something here. So this is not served from localhost. It has REM Intel NUC, name of my computer, port 81, and then live test. You won't be able to install a service worker here. Okay, and this can really throw you because this is not served from HTTPS or localhost. So if we were to let's bring up the Chrome debugging tools, and let's say we want to inspect our devices. So we want to take a look at what's going on with this particular application. We should see our device come up, and here it comes, and here's our application. So now let me make this a little bit smaller so everything kind of fits. And what we're going to see is when we take a look at service workers, we don't have one. And the reason is because it didn't come from HTTPS or it didn't come from localhost. And we can look at our cache storage and say, there's nothing there. So you might think, oh, geez, this is all messed up. No, it's not. This is just playing by the rules. So if you want to install on the device, make sure you're going to install from HTTPS. And so that'll solve that problem for you. But these tools can be really, really helpful. And I hope you learned a few things from that. Next, I'd like to show you some of the work that I'm working on. These are new projects, and this is a work in progress here. We're adding the ability to support push notifications within web apps. So this will be within any kind of web app or PWA. And what you're looking at here now this is my test code that I'm writing. This is all written in React. I do this a lot. It makes it really easy for me to find example code and so on. In this case, we're using Firebase. And so it was much easier to dig through their React code, which ultimately is JavaScript. And then this gets orchestrated into the builder and then ultimately becomes part of the product. So this is just test code here that you're looking at, but you'll get a good sense, I think, of what you can do with push notifications in web apps and within PWA apps. So I've got a Firebase project set up with Firebase messaging. And this application over here is running on localhost 3000. And I've got the application tab open here. Let me make this a little bit different. And we'll be able to see there's a service worker there that's active. And that's the thing that's really driving the messaging. It's, again, very similar in what the same service worker that we use in PWA apps. It's running on a separate thread. And in fact, when I write this for PWAs, all of it will go in the same service worker. The user has to opt in to receive notifications. They won't just randomly happen. So the first thing you have to do is click on click here to receive notifications. Now, when you do that, if we look in the console here, you'll see it's actually right here. This has been running, so this is all stuff that's been notification permission was granted. Now, if it hadn't been granted, it would have asked me, do you want to grant do you want to allow notifications from this app? But it's already been done here. So, but you can see the token. So this is unique to this browser right here. And right now, what I've done with that, again, for test purposes, what I've done is if I go into my application tab and I look at my local storage, you'll see that I've got a token right here. Now, this token is the token that was passed back to me from Firebase messaging. And I can copy that token. If I come down in here and copy it, I can go ahead and paste that in. So if I wanted to, this is in Firebase here. So if I want to send out a test notification message, I can do that here. And I could say, yep, this is the token. I've already copied it in. And I could just say test. And here you'll see now we're in the app. And in this case, it's displaying a message over the app. And I can just say, yeah, okay. Now, that's actually not recommended. So, but just to test it and to show you what that is like, that's the reason that I did that. Now, if I'm on another site, or even this tab wasn't open at all, the service worker, again, would still be running. And if we go ahead and send a test message here, again to the same token, we'll see the message come up here. And then I can do things like I can actually make it go somewhere else. In this case, I'll say go to pricing. So it's going to bring up a alpha software pricing page. You can kind of make it go anywhere. You can do quite a bit with this. Here, we'll send another message over with the Porsche page active. And I'll show you. So if I just click on, like, notice I went to another page. So, again, a lot you can do here. Leave it again. We'll send another test message here. and I won't do anything. So it just shows me the message, and I can control what exactly it displays up here. This image I could change or whatever, and eventually it just goes away. So it's very native-like in on an iOS or an Android device as well. It acts just like the traditional messaging that you see, and this is something new. iOS added it fairly recently. I believe it was in February that messaging was finally added to PWAs for an Apple device. So there's a lot more to do here to get this to the point where it's ready to be rolled into the product in a builder. But it's coming along nicely. One of the other things you can do is right from within the developer tools here in Chrome is you can look at the push messaging here and you can say, oh, I want to record that. And when we do it, again, we'll go over and send a test message here. So yeah, if you click on here, you can see everything, the payload that came through in the message and so on. So that can be helpful when you're trying to troubleshoot these things. Now what we have to do from here is that token has to be stored server side. And these would be people that, you know, wanted to receive notifications. And you can also subscribe to topics. So people that want to subscribe to, you know, you could have any given topic. That token is stored in it, again, in a database server side where you can push notifications out to specific topics. So, and this is all handled again through Firebase messaging. So you might want to start getting used to that and, you know, sort of exploring Firebase messaging a little bit. You can use it for both native iOS, native Android, and of course now for web and PWA apps. So that's something new coming along, and stay tuned for something else. Okay, next what I'd like to do is show you some of the work that I've been doing on a new project. And this is a project to replace Cordova with React Native. So the idea is that we'd be using React Native and React Native tooling and no Cordova at all to still get the native application on the devices using React Native. We're driving it through JavaScript talking to all the native controls, kind of similar in a way to the way things are done in Cordova, so that the app can be built in Alpha. And this particular app you're going to see this is working preview. So this is the component with this app. And this is what I'm going to show you running in React Native. And if we take a look at the design, like for example, on the take picture button here, you can look at what we're sending. And in this case, we're creating an object where the feature is get the photo. Here are some options. Kind of looks a little like the stuff you'd pass to a Cordova plugin. And then we send the data to the React Native app and send the request over. That in turn is going to call into native components and work as you would expect. So let me just move Alpha out of the way here. And now you can see my iPhone, and I'm running Expo Go. So Expo Go is a really nice development tool for use with React Native, and it allows like instantaneous updates and things like that. It's really, really nice. So I think for the first rev of any work that we do here, it'll probably be running in Expo Go, but or running under Expo. So it's pulling in an update. Okay, so now here you can see my application, and I've got a server running here that so that we can see everything that's going on, or a console running here in Expo. So let's go ahead and take a picture. So here, this will be a picture of my office here. So let's save there, and let's go ahead and use the photo. There you'll see it. Notice the experience is very much like you would see like with Cordova. Next, we'll go in and get a picture. So here we'll grab a picture from my gallery here on my iPhone, choose it, and the same kind of thing. Next, we'll do a recording of audio. So this is an audio recording here. We're just testing 1, 2, and see how that goes. I'm going to stop and play it. It's going to upload that file to S3, getting a signed URL. Anyway, it got a signed URL from an alpha server, uploaded it to S3, and then played it back. So that's a good test of a lot of things going on there. And this next one, I'll set a session variable, calling back to an alpha server, and I'll get a session variable. Again, doing the same thing, and we'll do an AJAX callback back to an alpha server. So this simple test demonstrates an awful lot of what needs to happen in order to build native applications, React Native applications that are derived from Alpha Anywhere components. This is going to be a big project. This is going to take some time to do. There's an awful lot of work that needs to be done to make it happen. But so this is a proof of concept application right here. And you know, the code, in fact, here, this is the index HTML file driving this thing from the web side, so in the web view, and this is all stuff this is the stuff that comes right out of Alpha. So this is very similar to just publishing your files directly out of Alpha, and then from there, I've done a lot to bring in numerous components into our React project here, and then developed a technique to communicate from the JavaScript side to the native side, and from the native side back to the JavaScript side. Again, it's very similar in many ways to Cordova. We're interested in doing this because the React community is, and the React Native community is so vibrant, and there's so many new things going on in that space. It appears to me that it's a really good way to go. So this is something that's coming. Can't really tell you exactly when, because it's not a main project for me. I'm still heavily involved with the Cordova side of things, and will be, I'm sure, for quite some time. But this is something that I am working on, and I think something that has a tremendous possibilities. So I wanted everybody to see that. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. Let me go ahead and switch to my screen here. And we're going to pop over to, there we go. So we do have a couple of questions, not a lot here. So maybe I'll just address this.
Can you hear me, Dave?
I sure can, Bob. Great presentation, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So the question was about with PWAs, since it doesn't have access to the file system, but it can use something called IndexedDB. The question that someone has was, well, when I close down the application, does that IndexedDB stuff go away, or does that persist on the device? They're afraid of data loss, of course, if they can't have that data persisted.
Well, it's persisted, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, not a problem. Yep. Let's see what else we've got for questions. I don't have a ton right now. I don't have a ton right now. That's great. Excellent. Well, just as a quick reminder, anytime you do have a question, you could always send them to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com, and we are happy to get it over to the person who has got the answer. So that wraps it up here for our first session. I'd like you to join us next at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll be talking to the folks over at Start Software, where they're going to be demonstrating some applications and some techniques that I think you are going to find interesting. So I can't wait to see you there in just about 30 minutes. Thank you very much, Selwyn. Thank you very much, Bob, for presenting. Very much appreciate it. Take care, guys.